What would you say are the 5 main points of great leadership?
Listen to understand, recognizing failure for what it is, um, a tool for growth, not being afraid of difficult situations and conflict situation, to be servant leader, to really care about the people. Like, just you have to love people, not just the people you work with, but I think you just need to be a person who has love for people to be able to be a good leader.
Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Today we're excited to welcome Miha Matlievski, also known as the Fail Coach. Miha's journey from entrepreneurial success to bankruptcy and back again has been both inspiring and educational. His unique approach to embracing failure and using it as a stepping stone for success has helped many entrepreneurs worldwide. In this episode, we'll dive into Miha's early challenges, his strategies for personal development and leadership, and his insights on business growth. Now, don't forget to like and subscribe for more engaging conversations with key industry leaders. Let's get into it. Miha, so welcome back, or welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I think we're very excited to have you here with us today. And, I think one of the things that we're looking most forward to discussing with you is, just the intricacies of personal development and business growth. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, could you start by introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Bianca, and hi, everybody else. It's a pleasure to be here, to be invited by you on this podcast. So I grew up in Slovenia. I had a very amazing childhood and very spoiled upbringing, but that really lacked any experiences for growth. And so later on, when I would join my father's company, unfortunately, my father died very early on, and I had to take on the business, and I had no clue what I'm doing. And I really just woke up into the real world at 23. And so ups and downs and so on later, I had this really big crash in 2009, lost everything, ended up in huge debt, depression, anxiety, suicide attempts, and a few other things later. I finally had the aha moment of the life that nobody else is guilty for the stupidities that I did, stupid decisions and stuff like that. And that was really helpful because I was like, well, if I did that, then if I can learn from that, I can turn things around and do things better. And that's when the journey started. And there was a lot of years of business development, personal development. I had to learn so much and really grow up finally. And that's how I ended up becoming the Fail Coach. Of course, in between those failures and the Fail Coach, there was an actually successful startup that I was able to exit. And then I went, I said, okay, retirement. I did my thing. And after 3 days living in Lisbon, I got so bored. I mean, it was fun, but I just got bored, and I started looking for meetups and conferences because I needed to be amongst my fellow entrepreneurs. And when they heard my story, they started reaching out. Hey, I would love to run something by you and this and that. And it was amazing seeing a few weeks or a few months later when they would reach back and say, hey, I did what you suggested and I got this results, that results. And one night, a friend of mine and me were having a few beers, and I was, what do I do now? I'm a bit too young to retire. And he said, well, you're obviously enjoying this whole helping other fellow entrepreneurs and this stuff. And why don't you just do coaching consulting? And then when I was thinking, that same evening after those same beers, like, how do we name this, success this, success that, and so on. And he was like, dude, I mean, everything that you say, you always start, remember when I did that stupid thing and it failed, and then this is what I learned from it, and that's how I then did it differently. And he said, like, you're the fail coach. And maybe it was because of the beer, I don't know, but I really loved it. Registered domain name, and 8-9 years later, we're doing really well, growing as a company, helping more and more entrepreneurs. Currently in Europe, US, Canada, looking to maybe expand to Southeast Asia as well. That's, I would say, not the shortest, but short version of the whole thing.
Well, listen, I mean, you've very clearly had, some significant challenges in your life and of course in your early career, and I'm truly sorry for the things that, you had gone through. I'm sure that those things weren't easy, but I think for sure you see them as things that really brought you to where you are today, right? Which is incredible. And I think it's fantastic that you can actually take the things that were challenging or you maybe failed at and build something out of it, right? Now, how would you say that these experiences really, shaped your approach to business?
Well, at some point, I don't know how I came to that, but I guess I had to, was to really see how I can learn from the past. And I started a thing that I now call Failure Journal. But basically back then I bought a Moleskine notebook, and on the top of the page, I would write down in as much detail as possible what some failure was, and explain it. And then I would just ask myself a whole lot of reflective questions. What were my expectations? Because very often we put expectations on things that are outside of our control instead of on the things that are in our control. And then we don't succeed. And then we feel like we failed. But in reality, we didn't. So many different things that can contribute to why we feel like we failed. And I would just ask myself those questions, and then I would go into, okay, what are some lessons that I can learn here? And really end it all with, okay, what are some actionable steps or things that I can do differently next time, so that at least I get a different outcome. It might not be a successful one, but at least it will be a different one. And if I eliminate enough of the things that don't work, I will eventually find things that do work. And when I'm asked about what is the biggest thing that helped you in your business development, I would say it's the practice of doing that. And I still do it. Like nowadays, I do this quick end of the day routine where I just look at the day and I say, okay, so what was good? What could have been better? And what can I learn from the whole thing? And how can I, apply some of this tomorrow, next week, whenever the circumstances arise, to be, 1 to 3% better tomorrow than I was today. And it compounds throughout the time. So I would say, there are many different things. Well, on the internet today, it's very popular to say the one thing that will change your life, the one thing that will bring many new clients in. So everything is about that one more thing. In reality, it's a whole lot of little things when you put them together that create significant change. I haven't seen something that would be just this one thing. It's stuff that you do. It's how you think. It's your mindset, how you are as a person, how much you grow, how much of a growth mindset you have, like a whole lot of different things. How you are with people, how you are with communication, soft skills, hard skills, personality traits, behaviors, and so on. So it's many different things that, almost like a whole bunch of puzzle pieces. And when those puzzle pieces click, then you have something, you have a picture at the end.
Exactly. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And there's definitely going to be a time in this conversation where I want to get more into that. But first of all, you said something earlier about, failure and expectations. And I just wanted to ask you, do you think that managing expectations at the start of a business really can help avoid feelings of failure down the line, especially if you expect, especially a startup, to go one way, but you have to pivot into something else? Do you think there's something to starting by managing the expectations of what the outcome of that small business might be or startup might be?
Absolutely. What I see very often is people just jumping into the entrepreneurship. And I was the same. I just jumped in. I had, no formal education. I dropped out of high school in my third year when I was 17. So I didn't go to, Harvard Business School or something like that. Yes, my father was an entrepreneur, but he never taught me much because, we weren't planning on him leaving so fast. And so I didn't have the knowledge. So how can you do something if you don't have some proper knowledge? If you have no clue that, what's product market fit? I don't know. What's, buyer's journey, customer experience? What are all the different things that go into running a business? You need to be at least a little bit knowledgeable about finances. Yes, you can have an accountant, but you still need to, read P&L statement. You still need to know how certain decisions will have effects on your balance sheet and stuff like that, and what accountants can do and can't do after you give them the papers. That's already too late. You need to understand before you do something how that will affect your business, and just little things like that. And people just mostly jump in. Now, some startups, they go to accelerators, incubators, and some of them have better, some not so well thought out programs that teach them about different things that you need in the planning phase, and the knowledge that you need to gain. And then, you have books, you have courses, you have coaches, you have many different ways how you can get that knowledge. But quite a lot of them skip all of that and they just dive straight into it. And then, of course, when you do that, the likelihood of something going wrong is just much higher. I mean, even if you do all of that, there's no guarantee. Nobody can guarantee you, if you do these steps, you will get this and this kind of result, because there are still certain things that depend a little bit on luck, on timing, on this, on that. So there's no guarantees. But if you go completely without any planning into a business venture, it's just highly more likely that there will be more failures along the journey. And I guess the thing is that every now and then, and I guess that's why people buy lottery tickets. Every now and then somebody wins. And then, we hear about those stories. It's like, I went from 0 to 7 figures in a month with just one funnel. And then, a whole bunch of people, millions of people think, all I need is one funnel. I remember this so vividly. I probably won't ever forget it. It was 2018. I did like a podcast episode, and I was talking about how important it is to do some business planning. And a guy reached out to me and said, dude, this is 2018. All you need today is an Instagram page and a funnel. It's like, okay, you do you.
Did you laugh when he said that?
Well, I was just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, you can't argue with stupid.
Well, they say you shouldn't actually. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, yes, I see what you mean. And would you then, in that case, recommend that, say, someone is wanting to start a startup and they haven't gone to, like, say, Harvard Business School or anything like that? What are the things that they can do to start learning about those various things that you were mentioning earlier? Of, the financials and the this and the that. Do you think just doing like a small course or a couple of small courses online, on Udemy or something like that, is enough?
Well, anything is better than nothing. And usually in the business world, it's like either you spend money or you have to spend time. So if you have the money, then finding a mentor, finding a business coach would really be very beneficial because they can really help you in many different things. Now, if you don't have that, maybe you have some money, you can maybe enroll in a group something, or you buy some courses. If you don't even have that much, then go on Amazon, buy some books, watch YouTube, listen to podcasts. But it will be much longer and much harder because not everything can apply to you. I mean, I watch a lot of videos on YouTube, mainly for some inspiration for some of my own content. And a lot of that is very sound advice, but it applies to a maybe certain niche or a certain industry or a certain thing that you're doing. It might apply for a service business, but not for a manufacturing business, and so on. And you will just have a lot of trial and error. But if you can afford yourself, and it's not easy to afford a good mentor or a good business coach, because the good ones, they have their price, and not many can actually afford that at such an early stage. Then yeah, you'll have to try a lot, but a good business coach can speed up those things tremendously. um, and again, you have some startup incubators, accelerators who really offer good support. And then they are the ones who pay for those consultants, coaches, and so on to come in and teach some stuff. And some do tremendous work. But yeah, there's also, I've come across some incubators and stuff where I was like, how do you teach this stuff? Like, this is such nonsense. But yeah, they still do it. So you have to do your research. You have to shop around, do your research, turn on the critical thinking. Don't fall for, Lamborghinis and Ferraris and mansions and half naked ladies dancing around some, guru. But yeah, most people, they just want to do it easy. They want quick fixes, and they go for stuff like that. And I guess that's why there's only like 3, 4, 5% of people who actually make it in the business world, and it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe patience is a virtue in that case. Um, but just one more thing before we head over to the topic of leadership, really. Um, Having gone through what you've gone through in your early life and your career, are you happy that you really went through all of that and kind of you were pushed it sort of into the deep end, right? And you kind of had to learn everything from scratch. Looking back now, do you think that you would have still gone through all of that again, or would you have rather gone to Harvard Business School and all of that? And why?
Yeah, that's a very good question that I get asked a lot. And no, I
Sorry.
wouldn't change a single thing.
Okay.
It all served its purpose. I needed those lessons. Now, looking back, I'm just so grateful to everything that happened to me, because it got me where I am today, and I'm in this really, really happy place, and I love life. Now, of course, when things were happening to me, that wasn't happy time. But now, with all this time in between, yeah, I'm just so grateful. And sometimes they ask me, like, if you could go back in time and change one thing, what would that be? Nothing. Like, literally nothing.
I think I think your entire journey thus far has been extremely inspiring, Miha, or Maiha, sorry. Um, I think, especially with your experiences at the early stages of your career, I think it, as we established, set a solid foundation for the type of leader um, you are today. So on that topic, let's shift towards that area now. Um, we spoke a little bit about business and all of that, right? So, what strategies would you say have proven most effective in learning new concepts and really transforming them into lasting aspects of personal growth?
Well, and this is not something I've learned. I guess I was always like that. I remember when I was a young kid, my mom would always buy me encyclopedias and stuff because I always wanted to understand how things work. Always go back to the foundations and figure that out. But that really helps when you're learning. And I saw something online maybe a year or two ago about Elon Musk, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, but how he always, when he's facing a new topic, he always learns the fundamental stuff first, and then starts adding. And they made a reference to the tree and the leaves. So if you focus on the roots first, it will be very easy to apply different leaves. But if you just learn little some things, it will be very hard to connect things together. So when you understand the fundamental stuff, then everything becomes quite easy. And like, you could just put me on a spot, and I do that often. When I do workshops, my workshops are always very um, engaging. So it's not like, oh, here's a PowerPoint and now I'm going to read. And I just go across the room and like, bam, 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 let's tackle, your stuff. And you can put me on the spot. And because of that foundational knowledge, in most cases, not in all, but in most cases, I can, produce certain ideas on the spot. But that's because of that. So I don't know how you can learn that, to go to the foundations first. I have no idea. But I think it is the best approach, because when you understand the fundamentals, it's so easy to add more stuff. Like just a year, a bit ago, when AI, the Chat GPT came out, I hired a few coaches. I said, teach me some fundamentals about AI so that I can understand like what's happening in the back. And then crafting prompts and doing stuff with those AI models became very easy, because I understood better, not well, but better, how it a little bit works in the back. I mean, it's a huge topic, and I'm not an AI guy or an IT guy, so I'm not kidding myself that I know now all the fundamentals. But it was much easier for me to then do stuff. And when a new tool comes out, I have a really quick learning curve to start using the tool.
Okay. So, in this strategy of basically learning the fundamentals, right, how have you applied these lessons when helping others become better leaders?
Well, whenever I'm working with a client, we always start with figuring out where their level of knowledge and understanding is, and how much we need to add so that we can actually talk the same language. I just had this talk today with a client because he's now faced with the challenge where he has to go in a more consulting sales approach, because he's targeting a different niche that doesn't have the level of understanding that he needs them to have to sell his services. So he needs to educate them a little bit. And we were just talking about it, and I was reminding him, said, remember when we did this and this and this, we first focused on teaching you. Once you were at the same level, it was much easier for us to then have conversations, because you understood the basics, you understood why this is important, how this connects to all the other things that we have to still do. So I always go from there. But of course, I try to assess as much as possible the level at which client already is, so that I don't talk about some stuff that they already know.
Or don't know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, do you have an example of somebody that you might have helped, specifically looking at like the before and after effects of this type of teaching?
Well, okay, just let's take this guy for example. So, what we were doing with him was, one of the things that we were doing with him was some business development for this new type of service for a new market. And when you do that, the first thing you have to tackle is product market fit. Inside the product market fit, the most important category is your ideal client avatar, your niche, like whatever you want to call it, but who will be the buyer? Because what you offer, well, it needs to resonate with them. Is it profitable? Well, can they afford it? What's the competition like? Stuff like that. What is the addressable market? And then your unique value proposition, something that you can actually deliver, and they actually need that or want that. And if you don't understand the client avatar, then it's very hard to understand where they are, who they are, and what language they speak. And I'm not talking about English or French or Italian, but like, different industries have different vocabularies. They have different ways of describing their problem and the desired solution and so on. And if you don't have that intimate understanding of your ideal client avatar, well, of course it's hard to put together a marketing plan, and it's hard to create a content plan, and it's hard to create a buyer's journey, and where does the sale come in, and how do we put some customer experience on top. What usually people want to do is spend maybe an hour on ideal client avatar and then just rush through everything else, but that's not enough. And if I wouldn't first take the time to explain the whole process and give examples how, if we don't understand correctly, like how can we choose what social media to be on? How can we choose what events to go on? How can we choose what kind of content? And just through examples, he was able to connect the dots. And then when we actually started doing those things, he wasn't rushing. He took the time that's needed to really get that intimate knowledge about his ideal client avatar. And then everything was super easy, because once you have that knowledge, putting all those other puzzle pieces together is very simple.
Amazing. I love that example. That's very, very good. Thank you so much, Miha. So, in your opinion, what would you say should a typical working day of a senior executive look like? What should be their core principles every single day?
Well, one of the things is people. People. Uh, just a few weeks ago, I did a workshop for some leaders in corporation, just junior leaders. And I started the workshop by saying, most things in our lives are based on mathematical formulas, laws of physics, and they're quite logical, quite tangible. It's easy to understand them. The biggest question mark in our lives is humans, other people. But we are social beings and we live among other people. So if we don't know how to navigate through that, we will have difficult time, whether we are leaders or just, whatever we do with our friends, families, co-workers, and so on. And so the soft stuff, emotional intelligence, empathy, conflict resolution, feedback, all of those things are very, very important. And so one thing that every leader should focus a lot on is people. The second thing is firehouse, not fireground. Most leaders, when we start working together, they spend most of their days on the fireground, just doing stuff. Because that's easy. I mean, easy. It's not easy, but it feels easy. You know exactly, oh, I need to make some phone calls, write some emails. But the magic doesn't really happen there. And especially when you have some employees, that's why you have them. You should be in the firehouse. That's where you learn, you grow, you network, you go to your industry events, you go to some other masterminds, you hang out with other fellow entrepreneurs. You strategize, you think about the vision and the mission, the company culture, the values, like a whole lot of different things. So you should spend majority of your time in the firehouse, and I would consider that people is firehouse, not fire ground.
Okay. So these types of, I want to say, soft skills, I don't think they really are, but things like empathy, understanding, compassion, those kinds of things in a leader, are these things that can actually be taught or self-taught even?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't know any of the stuff that I know today.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't think I was born with any of that stuff. I can't remember being born. Well, I mean, it was always easier, not easy, but a bit easier to make connection with people, especially in one-on-one settings. So I was never good at group things before. I was always the shy person in a corner and not talking to anybody. Uh, but when I had the opportunity to sit down with somebody, it wasn't that difficult for me to form some relationship. Other than that, I didn't know shit. And I had to really read a whole lot of books, because back when I was dealing with this stuff, I don't think there was Facebook, LinkedIn, or maybe it was just starting. This whole coaching programs, none of that really existed. So I had to order books from Amazon, read through them. And the funny thing is, this soft stuff, whether that's skills or not, it's like the hard stuff. You can read a book and then you can go and apply it right away. With the soft stuff, you need to practice and practice and practice and practice for a long time before you become good at it. So there are no shortcuts, and it's not a quick thing. But yeah, I believe you can learn all of that, and you can change if you really want to. Nobody can make you, but if you want to, you can.
So, say for instance, you're doing some self reflection as a person, any hypothetical person. How can we as people really identify where our strengths and our weaknesses are and what we need to work on then?
Well, that's a good one. So I would call this the first pillar of emotional intelligence, self-awareness. And it's a tricky word, because people think self-awareness is when you sit down with yourself for a few hours or for a few months and pour out, preferably on a piece of paper, what you think, who you are, what you want, what are your values, and so on. But you need to put a mirror to that to get the real self-awareness. So to do that, and it's not easy, because you have to convince people around you that you really want to hear the harsh truths about yourself, so that they give you feedback. And it's not easy to convince them, because they don't want to hurt us. So that's the tricky part, convincing everybody that you really want to hear all the stuff that they have to tell you about you. And it's only when you put those two things together, how the outside sees you and how you see yourself, and when that's aligned, that's when you have true self-awareness. And I don't think anybody has like 100% self-awareness, but at least when you come close to that, you are already on a quite a high scale. And that's how you figure those things out. And through that discovery, you can also figure out, oh, you're better at this, and you need to work more on that, and so on.
Okay, so Mayra, I really want to pivot now to another critical aspect of your expertise, which of course is business growth and building. Now, having worked with various leaders, once again, what would you say are the most common challenges that they share?
Well, just like everybody else, they excel at certain areas and they lack certain areas. Very often, we see that they lack people stuff, either because they don't find the time, or maybe they really don't see that as such a huge value to prioritize, or sometimes they are just not good at it. And so that's very disturbing, because it's becoming just so important. Because 20-30 years ago, people didn't have so many options, and you were able to be an asshole and people would still work for you. But in today's world, people have so many options. They can just go online and work for whoever they want, remote jobs, this, that. I mean, it's very hard to keep somebody who is unsatisfied to continue working for you. Maybe people who are nearing the retirement age or something like that, they're just willing to say, well, fuck it, I'll just survive this for another few years. But especially young people, they won't tolerate that. And then leaders say, oh, these young people, they, like, where are the good old times? But the world changed, and you have to adopt. In today's world, you have to become a servant leader.
Can you elaborate on that? What does a servant leader mean?
Well, some people translate it for themselves a little bit wrongly, and they think like, oh, if I become a servant leader, then I'm a slave to everybody. But it's not like that. I mean, and you have to find your own leadership style within servant leadership, because there are not just one way how to do it. But it basically means that you care about people, and that when you find the right people, you enable them. I hate the word empower, because I don't like to say that you empower somebody. I think that we can only empower ourselves. But as leaders, we can enable and give the tools and resources and opportunities to people so that they can empower themselves and become the best versions of themselves. And that's really being a servant leader. I mean, I know that when you look it up online, there's a whole lot of other things, but I'm not that good at remembering little details. But anybody can look it up, and they will get a much longer description. But being a servant leader is, I think, the only way to go forward.
I really like that personally. But could you maybe give any advice to people that are aspiring to be service leaders or servant leaders in today's age? How can they teach themselves to be better at doing that?
Well, the teaching is the same as we already talked. You can, hire a coach, you can, read books, you can watch stuff online, you can go to certain courses. But it starts with you. So self-awareness and managing yourself, those are the first two pillars of emotional intelligence. Don't skip those two. Go on a journey, figure out who you are, and then learn how to manage yourself. Then it's social awareness. Just go out, observe, and try to figure out, become better at observing and become more mindful, so that, right now we're talking and I have to think and do all of that. But I'm still trying to observe you to get some feedback. Am I going too long? Are you already bored? Am I, is it interesting enough? Oh, are you trying to say something? So I have to continue observe that as well. And then the fourth thing is then managing other people. So don't skip the first three pillars and go straight to the fourth one. And then also it starts with you in a way. If you don't show trust, if you don't give trust, you won't get trust. If you don't show vulnerability, people will not just open up. If you don't do things first, if you're not willing to be the first, you can't just expect from people, oh, my employees, they don't tell me shit. Well, do you tell them stuff? Do you ever ask them when they do tell you? Do you think about it? Do you consider it? Do you come back, give them feedback? Even if you don't go with that, but just give them feedback so that they feel appreciated. One thing that I often make leaders read is 5 Love Languages. Simple book, very simple. And of course, it's made for, personal relationships between two partners. But if you put on a little bit of a filter, like we all have love languages in a work environment, in friend environment, in family environment. And it's like you need to really care to understand love languages of others. You need to care about people to then have the patience to understand that. And when you do know what their love languages are, well, then it really shows whether you truly care or not. If you do, you will show them love the way they want to get it. And if you don't care, well, then you will just be an asshole and do whatever you want to do. So it's not that difficult. It's more or less just being a very good, decent human being, and that's the basics of servant leadership, and just not obsessed about yourself. But that's one thing, and I mean that's when we work with companies. It's so hard for them sometimes to understand that if they enable their employees to become the best versions of themselves. Yes, it will take a little bit longer, but at the end, the company, the owner, they will benefit the most, because, I mean, you can't have a failure of a company if you have an amazing group of people who are all enabled to be their best versions. Now, of course, you don't give chance to just anybody. They still need to be qualified. They need to have the right personality traits and so on. So we need to have good recruitment and onboarding and all of that things in place. But when you do have good people, then just enable them.
Exactly. I think that really sets you up for a long-term positive outcome for your business, right? Is nurturing the people that actually work there, especially if they're already very good. Now, just on another note that I was thinking about, can you recall a time when an unexpected strategy significantly aided in someone's growth?
Oh yeah, I have one. You're gonna laugh. So I was working with the leader from US, and he was really bad at figuring out a way to have some firehouse time every day. It was absolutely necessary, but he was just constantly on the fire ground. And because I'm very creative and I don't give up easily, I just start figuring out, like, what else can we try? What else can we try? And at some point, I got this strange aha moment, and everybody laughs when I say this. It was about 8 years ago. This year, they have presidential elections again. So 8 years ago, there was presidential election year. And I'm not going to say who, but he really hated one candidate. And so we made a deal. I created a scorecard for him for every day, and there was a certain number of points that he could get, especially focusing on the ones that were truly most important for the firehouse and some other things. And he had to get like 35 out of 40, something like that. And he could get bonus points for the few very important things. And unless he did it, if he wouldn't do it, before we started this, he sent a bunch of money to his brother, I think. And there was a deal that I messaged, if he doesn't report back and give and explain what he did that day in a way that I would truly believe him. So, you can't BS your way through it. His brother would send, I think it was $1,000 out of that money to that unwanted candidate. He didn't miss a single day for 3 months. And after 3 months, he was then a completely different person, living a lot in the firehouse, no longer that much on the fireground. But yeah, it was quite uncommon, but...
I actually really like that. Okay, I think the answer is probably quite obvious, but why do you think that is such an effective way, like, to use that sort of strategy of, like, if you don't do what you need to do to grow yourself, we're gonna piss you off the way we know how to piss you off. Like how how does that strategy, why do you think it's so effective doing that and not another way?
Oh, it works on some people. It wouldn't work on me. Like I don't react to that. Like for me, it has to be about fun and about people. So when I'm trying to um, well, a year and a half ago, I started a diet. Not so much a diet, more like health is wealth. And I'm not finally there, but I was like quite much bigger. So I'm now down already 46 kilos since then.
Wow,
I still,
congratulations.
thank you. I
That's
still
amazing.
have between 5 and 10 to go. So it's going slowly. But um, one of the first things my dietitian said was, well, you have to start working out. And one of the things that you have to start doing is walking for 1 hour every day. And I can't do it with my doggies. I mean, I do that with my doggies, but they're sniffing. You can't do really fast-paced walking. You have to stop so that they can pee and poop and stuff. So I had to schedule extra walking. And because I know that I can't rely on my friends, they're lazy as fuck. And there wasn't, I knew that if I tried to do it by myself, like there's just no way for me to get my ass off the couch and go walking. And I hired a trainer. And instead of us working out in the gym, I paid the lady to go walk with me for an hour. But I did it. So I knew that it needs to involve people, because if I give my word to somebody, I will come here every day at this and this time. Like, there's no way in hell that I'm going to break my word, because my word means the most to me. I mean, I have to be in the bed with 40 degrees Celsius or something like that to not do it. Being with people was fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have to say, I actually have that in common with you. I also need other people in my life to motivate me. And I think that brings us back to the point where having people around you and being able to work with other people really reinforces, we can't do things on our own, right? Most of us,
Yeah.
at least, can't really do things on our own in any situation, whether it be in business or exercising or anything else, right? Okay, so when analyzing different leadership styles, what would you say is, common and notable leaders? I mean, I think we spoke a little bit about Elon Musk earlier, but, let's talk about other CEOs as well. I mean, Google or Wikipedia or Apple, or even Facebook, what do these big tech leaders really have in common?
Well, I mean, we could argue how much is there any common thing when it comes to Elon,
Yeah.
but I would say that there are some traits. I would say they all are big visionaries. They are very resilient, very adaptable to whatever happens, whatever's thrown their way. They all, I think, are very good at learning from failures. And they all have huge growth mindset, and they just keep growing, learning, growing, like it's nonstop. I think those are for sure some common traits.
Okay. Is there any, approaches from specific or any specific business leader that you really, really respect?
Steve Jobs.
Why is that?
He was just so great at storytelling. And storytelling is the best form to convey a message ever invented in between humans. And he was just so great at that. And he was a great visionary. I mean, he had a whole bunch of very smart people around himself. It wasn't like he came up with every idea, but he was able to see certain things, notice some trends, and he's my leader crush.
I like
But
that. I'm gonna try using it.
also another person, he's not a CEO, but Simon Sinek, I love him. um, yeah, we talk both about a lot of the same things. So I do love him. um, he just knows how to say things way better than I do. I often, ramble a little bit, but yeah, he's amazing. And yeah, I could probably name a few more.
Okay. Um, okay, so if you had to really just put it in simple, like bullet points, right? What would you say are the 5 main points of great leadership?
5 main points. Uh, Listen to understand would be one of them, and not just to respond. Um, Recognizing failure for what it is, um, a tool for growth. Um, what would be number 3? Um, Not being afraid of difficult situations and conflict situation. Um, Number 4 would probably be to be servant leader. And number 5, to really care about the people. Like, just, you have to love people, not just the people you work with, but I think you just need to be a person who has love for people to be able to be good leader.
Okay. I really love how you actually like thought about that. Very often you'll find people that like boom, 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 they quickly list things out. But I like that you really took time to consider that one. And I think those are fantastic points. Um, Now, again, we did talk a little bit about how people can build on those types of skills and stuff like that. But I never asked you, do you have any recommendations for resources that people could check out to
Oh
learn?
boy. Well, I mean, I do, but I didn't make a list. I mean, there's a whole lot of great books. For example, like Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a really good book. Uh, Fuck It is a really good book to learn, how to say fuck it more often. Another great book is Five Love Languages. And I'm just probably missing so many good books right now because I'm very bad at remembering titles. But there's, like, in today's world, I think there is a much faster but probably equally good way. Is there are amazing YouTube channels, amazing podcasts that you can listen to and learn from others. Um, it's also not that difficult to get a mentor for free. I mean, it's not going to be somebody who will work with you on a weekly basis, but to have some touch points throughout the year, to have a chat or 2 or 3, it's not that difficult. I mean, I people reach out to me often, and when I see that there's some sincere, it's not, just trying to pitch you something, but when they do a nice approach, I'm like, yeah, sure, let's jump on a call, let's see how I can support you, how I can help you. And I know many fellow entrepreneurs and people who will also take some time. I mean, you can't help everybody, but like every now and then, and you just have to keep going and ask here, ask there. But you need to understand how to approach and not just be in somebody's DM. Hey, can you teach me this? And or even better version, oh, I'm starting a startup, I need $50,000, can you just wire me the money? Like, I've had those, and it's quite often, the amount can differ, but yeah, like you have a lot of that in DMs. And I've heard from other people same stories, especially from entrepreneurs who go a little bit more public and go on podcasts and conferences. Yeah, like, it's, yeah, the male equivalent of the unsolicited dick pics.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I like that one. Um, yeah, I can imagine that is like quite a shock. It must have been a shock when that first happened, I'm sure, where it's just like,
Yeah,
send
like
me $50,000 to start
I
my
don't
business.
know you.
Who are
I
you?
yeah, yeah. But then you get used to it.
Oh my goodness. I can't, it takes all sorts to make this world go around, right? Um, Miha, thank you so much. Really, it's been a wonderful conversation with you today, and we've really, I know I have really enjoyed this, and there's been some insightful comments as well. Um, Thank you, really, for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and like I just hope that somebody who needs to hear it will hear it, and that it will help at least one person in some way. That would be something that would be very nice.
Thanks again to Miha for sharing his remarkable journey and valuable insights with us. Now, if you're looking for a top digital agency for your upcoming project, make sure to visit designrush.com/marketplace. Here you'll discover a wide selection of agencies perfectly suited to bring your project to life. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more enriching conversations with industry pioneers. Again, I'm your host, Bianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.